Good morning. Wednesday, April 15th. Om Agyanatimirandasya Ganagana Salakya Chaksurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Swayam Rupakara Mayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagatatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Samsadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sayatam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shivishikan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamanum Namaste Sarasati Deva Gauravani Pacharine Nirvashesa Sanyavadi Praskata Desarari Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Good morning. Anjali, Mala, Terry, Minnesota, I think, right? Isn't it, Terry? And Govinda Dev, pranams, obeisances. We're making our way through the first canto, first chapter. We're on the 23rd verse today. The Sanskrit reads as follows. Bruhi Yogeshwara Krishna, Brahmanye Dharma Varmani, Sham Kastam Adunopate, Dharma Kam Saranam Gata. Since Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. This is a purport by Srila Prabhupada. Essentially, religion is the prescribed duties enunciated by the personality of God in himself. Whenever there is gross misuse or neglect of the principles of religion, the Supreme Lord appears himself to restore religious principles. This is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yadahi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavat Adbhutanam Dharmasya Tadatmanam Sridhamyaham. Here the sages of Naimisharanya are inquiring about these principles. The reply to this question is given later. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the transcendental sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus it is the full representation of transcendental knowledge and religious principles. So when the Lord was on the planet, whatever irreligion had preceded him eventually got eliminated during the course of his sojourn. He didn't eradicate them all immediately because he wanted to have some fun. And so he protracted it. But even as a child in Vrindavan, he was dispatching some of these demon wizards that Kamsa was sending to kill Krishna. And throughout his childhood and adolescence, he continued to, one by one, eliminate the burdensome tyrants who were on the earth at the time. And then in the 90th year of his manifested pastimes, he gathered any of the others that still remain, pretty much, on the Kurukshetra war, and then finally in that last fell swoop, rid the whole surface of the earth from impiety and irreligiosity. So basically the principle is that wherever there's light, there can be no darkness. Whenever the Lord descends or incarnates, he does so for the eradication of irreligion and sinful activities, which he did, at least by the 90th out of his 125 years that he was on the planet. And so then Krishna left the planet, and now the sages are saying, so as Krishna has withdrawn, as his light has receded, then is it a fact or is it not a fact that the darkness would come in after him? Having withdrawn his light, are we going to now again be plunged into darkness as we had been before the Lord appeared? And the answer is no. Because of the light of the Bhagavad Prana. Krishna Swadava Bhagavate. Swadava means his own abode. He visited here on a mission of mercy. As I said, he remained 125 years. And then after quitting his pastimes, he went back to Shwadam, his own abode. Krishna swadam dharma jnana bahishaham, taking with him truth and knowledge, which automatically accompany the Lord wherever he goes. And it says, so in the absence of the personal presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is replaced, he is compensated for, because of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The light of the Bhagavad Purana will continue to illuminate the darkness of this age of Kali. Krishna Swadharma Bhagavad Dharmakam Yashaha. Well, that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about the mystic powers of the Lord. That consists essentially in his being elsewhere, in his Shradam, in his own abode, in his original form. And everything's going on automatically. He's reserved himself. The Krishna form, Sharup, is playing the flute with a smile on his face, raven back hair, peacock feather, yam shaima sundaram achintaguram. It's the most enchanting, attractive form in all of material and spiritual creation. And that form is specifically and exclusively reserved for reciprocation with his loving, eternally liberated, surrendered devotees. So Krishna is a madman for love. Krishna is all about love. Some people misunderstand, or some academics write about Krishna with reference to erotic love or physical love or mundane love. No, that's the benefit of getting instruction from a bona fide spiritual master and studying the scriptures under his direction. You don't mistake Krishna's love affairs for anything to do with this mundane world. It is divine, transcendent love, which has nothing to do with the lusty affairs of this material world. And the mysticism of it consists in Krishna being able to totally forget himself, totally lose himself. This is God. Totally loses himself in intimate, loving relationships with his devotees. And while Krishna is like a madman for love, everything's going on perfectly throughout millions and millions of universes. The sun is rising. Yak chaktur savita sakalakaram raja samasti sura. In each and every universe, the sun is the king. Without the sun, life wouldn't even last. If the sun went out within an hour, there'd be no life anywhere within any given universe. The sun is the most powerful entity. The sun is an incarnation of Krishna called Surya Narayan. In any given universe, the sun is the most powerful living entity. And yet it is said that by the orders of Krishna, by the will of Krishna, the sun mounts his chariot and appears on the eastern horizon exactly to the second. Uddhava also in third canto of Bhagavatam, he says, Mad bayat bhati bhatuyam suryas tapati varsatindo dahatya mitis chariti mad bayat. He says, the winds blow out of fear of the Lord. The seasons change out of fear of the Lord. And death chases everyone out of fear of the Lord. Now, everything's going on perfectly. And yet it seems as if Krishna is like lost. It seems like he's just lost. You see what I'm saying? I remember the story of Prithviraj. He was the king of Delhi many hundreds of years ago. And he had successfully allied himself with all the Rajasthani kings at the time. And his power was ironclad. And he was a benevolent monarch. He kept the invaders, the Muslim invaders, the Pathans, he kept them at bay. And there was peace all throughout the land. And he was a good and a just and a conscientious ruler. And as long as he dedicated himself to ruling and to exercising the managerial duties of the king, everything was like heaven, like an ancient version of Camelot. But love was his undoing. Love was his undoing. I forget all the details, but I forget the name. But he became smitten by a young princess, and she was smitten by him. However, her father wanted her to marry someone else. He figured it would make a better political alliance if she would marry someone else other than Prithviraj. But it was love between Prithviraj and, I want to say Savitri, but I don't know. And so what Prithviraj did was he did at her Shrayamvar, when all the suitors were lined up, hoping that the princess would choose them, Prithviraj came along with 100 of his best generals, and he kidnapped her. He whisked her away. And there was a running battle. It was like 100 miles back to Delhi. And while Prithviraj was rushing towards Delhi at top speed with his newly kidnapped bride, on his chariot, the 100 of his best generals, the cream of his army, fought a rear guard action against the pursuers. And it was fierce, and it was prolonged. And Prithviraj gained the safety. He came through the gates of Delhi, but not one of his generals survived. They all surrendered their lives in the service of Prithviraj and Prithviraj's love affair. And then, having gained the love of his life, he started to enjoy sensual delights in the inner chambers of the palace, and days would go by, and he would not appear to do his durbar, to do his kingly duties, to consult with his espionage agents, to train his armies, to replace his 100 generals. And long story short, eventually there was a Muslim army that was set to attack Delhi, and Prithviraj had his allies, all of his Rajasthani allies with him, and it was not unusual in those days for 5,000 Rajasthanis to whip 50,000 Mughals and send them with their tails between their legs. So Prithviraj and all of his allies mounted a charge, or let me say, that was the idea. They were supposed to mount a charge against this vast Muslim army and put them to rout. But Prithviraj's father-in-law had this grudge against him. And unbeknownst to Prithviraj, his father-in-law, and I forget his name too, had arranged with all of the other elements there, the regiments, and they were all there voluntarily, as they had done in the past, to commonly repel the Muslim invaders. Prithviraj's father-in-law had arranged that when the bugle sounded for the charge, they would all betray him. They would all betray him. So there might have been, 10,000 Rajasthanis, of which Prithviraj had maybe 3,000 soldiers. So when the bugle blew for charging, instead of 10,000 Rajputs charging, it was Prithviraj and his men charged. And the others sat back and watched them all get slaughtered. And there's actually another very interesting story about Prithviraj in captivity and how he got back at, I think it was Muhammad of Ghor. But that's for another day. So why did I just tell this long story? At least I hope it was entertaining for you. But there is a connection with our theme today, and that is that when Prithviraj lost his head for love, he was no longer, things didn't get managed anymore. Things went in a handbasket. Because Prithviraj wasn't God. How many stories are there that just like that? There's a man, politician, or a businessman, or a leader. Maybe he's married, maybe he's not, but he loses it all for love. See, Ophelia, Othello. There's just countless stories. But Krishna is the exception. Why? Because he is Yogeshwara. He's the master of all mystic powers. And that consists in his being able to be mad for love, throw himself into relationships with his devotees. If you, as a devotee, give yourself, body, mind, and soul to Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, beginning with the tongue, to vibrate the Lord's name, and to take prasadam, consecrated food offered to the Lord. If you give what you have, which is, come on, let's be honest. It's like nothing, really. We come with nothing, we leave with nothing. So what do we have to give? Just a little bit of our willpower, a little bit of our vocal abilities, and then we have to eat anyway. So why not eat wonderful prasadam that's offered to the Lord, karma-free food stuff? So, There's nothing difficult that Krishna asks of us. Give yourself to your loving Father and follow the wonderful path of devotional service. Like we described yesterday, it's like being on a cruise ship. It's like having a pool and a running track and a buffet and entertainment on Saturday night, music and dancing, kirtan, good association, wonderful food. It's a better life than any other life you could possibly live. You know, you can't set out to be self-centered, set out to live a life of selfish hedon sensualism and have a better life than devotees have by serving and surrendering to the Lord. And if you do that, if you give yourself in that way to Krishna, God, the Lord of millions of universes, gives himself so completely to you that he loses his head just like a love-smitten teenager. Is that amazing? Or is that amazing? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during the 4 months of the rainy season, he was traveling sort of in a horseshoe. First he went to the south of India, and then he came up the west coast. So on his southern section, he came to Sri Rangam, the biggest Vishnu temple. I think it's 54 acres. The temple is 54 acres. There are 27 gopurams along the walls before you even get to the inner sanctuary. And it started raining. So for the 4 months of the rainy season, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu resided in Sri Rangam. There's a plaque there and a little shrine for that. And at one point, there was this illiterate Brahmin who used to come every day to the temple and sit there and read Bhagavad Gita. People could discern that he was illiterate because he would have the book upside down. And he would be mumbling. Now the other Brahmins who were highly educated would mock this illiterate Brahmin. They would make fun of him, like elbow each other in the ribs and point, check out this guy here. You know, what is he doing? He's a fool. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noted him, approached him, said, Brahmin, what are you doing? Now, he was aware that he couldn't read the words. He was aware of that. He was not unaware of that. So he said, every day I come and I pick up the Bhagavad Gita, and I can't read it. But there's a picture here of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the creator of millions and millions of universes, the controller over whom there's no other controller, the Alpha, the Omega, the King of Kings. And he has, out of love for his devotee Arjuna, he has descended from his own eternal spiritual abode of Goloka Vrindavan. And he, in order to help Arjuna rid the world of miscreants, he has agreed to be the chariot driver of Arjuna. It's like if we were to understand it, a chauffeur. He's agreed to be a chauffeur of Arjuna in the battle for ridding the final riddance of the world from all miscreants. And how does that look in actuality? Well, in the heat of battle, there isn't time for niceties. There isn't time for Arjuna to say, "O Lord of Lords, O God of Gods, beginning, middle, and end, could you please give us a sharp left because there's a bunch of arrows coming at us at 1,000 miles an hour." No, Arjuna, this is Krishna, this is God. And Arjuna was comfortable enough. Krishna was expert enough in playing his role. And he was in love so much with Arjuna that he was not only okay, not only did he tolerate Arjuna's barking orders at him, because who is he? He's the one that orders the sun to come up. He orders the wind to blow. He orders death to everyone. He's the supreme order giver, but out of love, having lost his head in love, he relishes Arjuna barking orders to him. He relishes that. So Arjuna left, right, Stop! Proceed! Full speed, half speed, 45 degrees to the right. Lord Krishna is just like drinking it in. Fellowship. But Krishna is Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic power. So the Brahmin said, when I think of Krishna subordinating himself, he to whom the whole world, demigods like Brahma, Shiva, they bow down, they offer his prayers, that Lord has descended as the chauffeur of his devotee Arjuna. He says, I just cry. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Brahman, you are the real reader of the Bhagavad Gita. You have truly understood the Bhagavad Gita. And he embraced him. Now, so Krishna is probably the only personality in the history of the world who can give himself over, lose himself for love. And again, it's not erotic love, it's not physical love. And at the same time, all the worlds are run exactly according to scheduled measurements. It said, Natasya karanam cha vidyate, natat samyas cha vyadakastudishate, parasya shaktir vividaiva suyataya, shrabhavaka bala jnana kriha. Natasya karanam. It means the Lord's got it all covered. Not personally. Personally, he reserves himself for his devotees. But through the diffusion of his multifarious potencies, everything is going on. Exactly, precisely, meticulously. It is said that although there is nothing for the Lord to do, and he is that person than whom no one is greater or equal, and what is the evidence of that? Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Suryatesha Bhavaka Balakurya. His energies themselves are so full of knowledge that they know what to do. They just go out and do it perfectly. Flowers open, stars are flung into the sky. Planets rush at thousands of miles an hour without colliding each other. The sun rises and sets. Rainfall comes and goes. The seasons come. All of it perfectly. That means that the Lord is full. The Lord is full to the extent that everything that comes from him is also full. There's nothing incomplete either about the Lord in his original form, nor is there in the terms of how it is that the Lord pervades and supports the entire universes. He says, Maya titamidam sarvam jagat abhyakta mortina. I run everything in an unseen form. Andantarash parashma. He's within the atom. He's within the heart of every living being. There's nothing out of his control. He says, I know everything. I support everything, but nobody knows me. Nobody sees me, not even the demigods like Parjiva. This is Yogeshwara. This is the mystic power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just read you the actual translation here. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of God, is almighty, omnipotent. He has nothing to do. He has multifarious energies, and therefore he is able to remain in his own abode and without endeavor automatically supervise and manipulate the entire cosmic manifestation. I'll read that once more because that's our theme this morning. He is able to remain in his own abode and without endeavor and automatically supervise and manipulate the entire cosmic manifestation. These interactions create different forms, bodies, activities, and changes, which all occur perfectly. Because the Lord is perfect and complete, everything works as if he were directly supervising and taking part in it. Everything goes on automatically while he is reserved himself for loving exchanges with his devotees. Everything goes on automatically, and everything goes on simultaneously. It's not that all the managers of the planets and the superintendents of all the elements are waiting at Krishna's doorstep, and when Krishna is saying, I'll be done with this loving exchange, this loving conversation. I'll be done with this joking, I'll be done with this companionship, and you just wait in a half an hour and then I'll come out. And then you can ask me your questions. And then we'll take up the matter of supervision. No, it's all going on simultaneously. And isn't that the great problem that we as conditioned souls wrestle with every day, especially if you're a husband and a father? Isn't that the tension? You have your career, and you want to do well in that. You want to keep your job and, if possible, be promoted, because that's what pays the mortgage. That's what puts food on the table. That's the wherewithal that you support your dependents. So that's imperative. At the same time, you have your family, and you need to enjoy them, and they need to have your association. They can't be neglected or abandoned, because they'll have issues. Now, how do you balance both of those? Because the more time you spend at work, the less quality time you have with your family. You say, Dad, we'd like to spend more time with you. But if you accede to the request of your children and your wife and make them happy, then your boss isn't as happy as he could be. So you never win. There's always, if you're doing this, you feel guilty you're not doing more of that. If you do that, you're feeling guilty you did more of that. And so there's always that tension, because you can't be in two places at one time. You don't have mystic power. Now, Prabhupada mentions in one purport that yogis with mystic powers, in other words, an ordinary living being like you and me, a jiva soul, who gets mystic powers, here's the limit to how much their mystic powers go. Prabhupada says, a yogi can expand himself tenfold. So that means from his original form, he can make 10 expansions. Not more than that. We'll talk in a minute about how Krishna did 16,000. We can do 10. And the thing is, each expansion is a mirror image of the original. They can't work independently. And what we're seeing with Krishna is that Krishna himself is not only working independently, but he is totally involved in love affairs. Every single devotee who is with Krishna feels that Krishna is with her or him exclusively. In other words, Krishna's attention is so much focused on that relationship, on that conversation, on that association, that they can't imagine that there's other things that are going on simultaneously and automatically. They think Krishna is head over heels in love with me. The queens in Dwarka thought of Krishna as, Prabhupada says, a hen-pecked husband. Krishna acted his role so perfectly that he gave the impression that it was all Krishna could do to manage their household, that he was in over his head there. There's no greater actor than Krishna. And yet, millions of worlds, spiritual and material, are going on automatically and simultaneously. So the tension that we experience between love, quality life, and quantity life, home life, and office life, if you're God, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. You give your original self, your original transcendent, beautiful form, Shyama Sundar, to your devotees. And then for the business of maintaining, creating, and annihilating millions and millions of universes, Vishnu. You expand yourself. And from one Krishna, you get millions of Vishnus, unlimited Vishnus, to take care of all the heavy-duty management. So from one Krishna, you get millions of Vishnus, but don't make the mistake. If you took a course in world religion in college and they told you that Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, it's unauthorized, unbona fide. Don't know where that popped up, but it's a disturbance. Jayadeva Goswami originally wrote the Das Avatar, the 12th century, the Gita Govinda. He doesn't mention Krishna as an incarnation of Vishnu. In fact, in his commentary, he specifically says, Krishna is not an incarnation of Vishnu. You can't get, from Vishnu, you can't get Krishna. You just can't. But from Krishna, you get millions and millions of Vishnus. So in his original form, Krishna does the quality home life thing. And in his expanded form as Vishnu, he maintains and supports millions and millions of universes. Devaki and her husband, they were called Sutapta and Prishni, I think, in their previous lives. They wanted to serve the Lord in the most ideal, selfless way. Most people go to church, mosque, temple, with their shopping list. They ask the Lord to be their step and fetch it. But Vasudeva and Devaki in their previous life didn't want to know how the Lord could serve them. They wanted to know how they could serve the Lord. And so they prayed to the Lord, come as our son. Next incarnation, whenever you're scheduled to descend, please arrange it that we precede you, and that when it's time for you to come, you will enter through my womb. God doesn't get packed up 9 months in a womb, but he's fully present within each and every atom of his creation. He's, again, one and the same time, Achinta, inconceivably, simultaneously, not sequentially, not chronologically, but inconceivably, simultaneously in his spiritual world. And he's also everywhere personally and fully present within the material creation. So he can appear from any atom. He can appear from here, 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 and here. So Devaki said, if you can appear from anywhere, well, why not bless me to serve you as my son appear throughout my room? And Krishna agreed. And so when Krishna appeared in the prison house of Kamsa, he originally appeared as the four-armed Vishnu with club and mace and lotus flower and discus. And at that time, Devaki asked him, because she was protective, she had protective maternal instinct towards Krishna, and Kamsa was out waiting for Krishna to take his birth so he could kill him. So Devaki thought, well, you're too obviously God. You're too obviously the one that Kamsa is afraid of. And Kamsa, as soon as he sees you like this, he's definitely going to try and kill you. And this is just love. This is just love. In love, you don't consider that God, nobody can kill God. In love, you want to serve him. And so in the service attitude, she asked the four-armed Vishnu, can you please hide yourself so you don't appear as such an obvious threat to Kamsa? She had no idea that later on that night, the guards would all fall asleep, the locks of the prison house would spring open, and Vasudeva would be ordered to take Krishna to Gokul. She had no idea. She was just doing what she could do, what she could conceive of to do, to try to give a cloak of protection to Krishna. So she asked Krishna, from that Vishnu form, you please revert to your original two-armed form as Krishna, so that you won't ring so many alarm bells in Kamsa's head. And out of love, because it says Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. He's captured by the love of his devotee. He says, Akalatma, Krishna himself can never set foot out of Vrindavan. And so when he comes to the material world, the business of destroying demons and ridding the earth of the burden, that's Vishnu's managerial job. That's Vishnu's managerial job. But insofar as it intersects with loving relationships with his devotees, like Devaki and Arjuna, at that time, Krishna cannot help but reciprocate with them by revealing his original form. Because Devaki doesn't care for the four-armed form of Vishnu. And Arjuna, after he saw the universal form, all the Vishnu forms, he said, Krishna, please show me your original form. That's what I relish. Sudur darshamidam rupam dustamamasa devamasya rupasha nitya kankshana darshanam. That's all the pure devotees want. They just want to see Krishna's original two-armed form. And Krishna, out of love, even though he is only obliged to be Vishnu in his mission in this material world, still the devotee can always coax, come on, out of Vishnu. They can always coax Krishna. But don't make the mistake of thinking that Krishna comes through Vishnu. Krishna is the original Swayam Bhagavan. He's the original source of both the material and spiritual creations, and he has his own incomparable planet called Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. And he never leaves there, except if and when the devotees ask him to appear before them in his two-armed form. And that's what he did, out of love for Devaki. Prabhupada says here, now, there's one more point, and I know that we're kind of pushing the limits of our time here today, but we can't really discuss this topic without addressing the 16,000 wives of Krishna, and this will conclude everything. Again, how totally misunderstood Krishna is by mundaners and academicists when they read that Krishna had 16,000 wives. Oh, he's really lusty. No, 16,000 goes far beyond lust. That goes into transcendence altogether. While Krishna was on the planet and his job was to rid the world of tyrants, and despots, and demons, there was one Narakasura, also called Bhaumasura, and he had captured 16,000 princesses, unmarried girls, and he had kept them in prison. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead defeated Narakasura, and then he liberated all his queens. Now, in the custom of those days, a girl, even if it was against her will, a girl who had spent any time at all in another man's house she would be ineligible to get married because her chastity would be questioned. You know, you hear about the Stockholm syndrome. Even though these girls were kidnapped against their will, still there was living in the house of the man, nobody knew for sure whether they hadn't developed an attachment for their kidnapper. And so they were outcasts. They had no access then back into society to get married by eligible young men. And whether you say it's politically correct or what, according to the Morris of today, that's another issue. This was the situation back then. So they had no shelter. Krishna liberated them and then basically said, you can go home. And they said, no, we can't. We can't go home. You can't go back. And they said, and that's okay with us, because actually all our lives, all we've ever wanted was to be your wife. All we've ever wanted is to serve you in conjugal love and affection. In fact, truth be known, they came from the spiritual world in order to continue their conjugal service along with the Lord as part of his pastimes. So Krishna said, how can I satisfy 16,000 wives? I'm just one. They said, no, you're not. No, you're not. Don't spoof us. We know better than that. You're the Yogeshwara. You're the Lord of all mystic powers. You can be everywhere simultaneously. You can be somewhere else, and you can also be here. So we know that you can satisfy each and every one of us. We know that you can expand yourself thousands of times. You're already in the heart of every living being, and not only humans, but reptiles, animals, insects, birds that fly, fishes. You're already in the heart of every living being. So for you to agree to be the husband of 16 is nothing. You could be 16 million, 16 billion. That would not even begin to challenge your unlimited power. Krishna said, okay, you got me. So he married 16,000 wives. And I just want to end here. I've taken enough of your time. I certainly appreciate your choosing to spend this time with us on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, beginning from 7:30 a.m. But we just got to read this segment from the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. It is amazing. And we've made the point that Krishna can fully give himself, just lose himself, and actually become mad in love for his devotees. And nothing suffers from a managerial point of view. Nothing suffers because Krishna's energies are so complete. They know what to do. They don't need his personal supervision. But the last point we want to make is that Krishna gives himself not just to one or two devotees. Don't make the mistake of thinking that, there's one Krishna in the spiritual world, and if you get liberation, the first thing you're going to do is get in the back of the line. And you might have to wait 1,000 or 10,000 celestial years until you get to the front of the line, and then you can shake Krishna's hand or offer his pranams, and then you have to move on. It's not like that. I'm sure you've gleaned from our talk that one Krishna can expand himself. And so each and every liberated soul, each individual or each group, however it works, however the chemistry works best, each individual or each group, as the case may be, feels that Krishna is with me or us only exclusively. And Krishna so fully identifies with who and what is in front of him, the conversation, the jokes, the exchange of loving pastimes, that even Krishna himself he's not aware of what he's doing elsewhere. And that point comes up in this passage, so I'll just get to the chase here. So Narada Muni wanted to see Krishna in all these different forms. And so he decided to visit Dwarka, and he'd visit all the 16,000 palaces of Krishna to see what Krishna was doing in each palace. Now, if he were an ordinary yogi, he would have been able to expand himself 10 times, and whatever he's doing in one palace, he'd be doing the same thing in 9 more palaces. He wouldn't be working independently. What to speak of 16,000 palaces working independently 16,000 different ways. That's Krishna and only Krishna, not even Vishnu. There's only one entity in all of material and spiritual creation who can do what Krishna did in Dwarka with his 16,000 queens, and he could have done it with 16 million, he could have done it with 16 billion, he could have done it with 16 trillion, because there's no limit to the power and the potency of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Narada Muni speaks here, or it's spoken of. After departing from the palace of Rukmini, okay, here it is. Prabhupada writes here, not that he appears before only 1 or 2 liberated devotees. There were 16,000 queens captured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and accordingly he manifested himself in 16,108 plenary expansions and simultaneously entered into each and every one of the palaces of the queens. This is called Vaibhava, or the transcendental mystic potency of the Lord. And because he can do so, he is known as Yogeshwara. And then he saw what Krishna was doing with Rukmini, and then it's explained, after departing from the palace of Rukmini, Naraji wanted to see further activities of the Lord's internal mystic potency. Thus he entered the palace of another queen. There he saw Krishna engaged in playing chess with his dear wife and Uddhava. When Narada arrived, the Lord immediately got up from his personal seat and invited Narada Muni to sit there. The Lord again worshipped him. Now, he had already worshipped Narada Muni a few minutes earlier in Rukmini's palace. So when Narada Muni visited another plenary expansion of Krishna in another palace, Krishna again got up to receive and to worship Narada Muni. It said, he again worshipped him with as much paraphernalia for reception as he had used in the palace of Rukmini. And this is just fascinating. Try and catch this, if you will, all right? I'll only read it once, but try to catch this. Try to follow this. After worshiping Narada Muni properly for a second time, Krishna acted as if he did not know what had happened in the palace of Rukmini. Mystic power. Naraji knew everything about the pastimes of the Lord, so without further discussion, he simply left the palace silently in great astonishment over the Lord's activities. He then entered another palace. This time, Naraji saw that Lord Krishna was engaged in his affectionate father, petting his small children. From there, he entered another palace and saw Lord Krishna preparing to take his bath. In this way, Saint Narada entered each and every one of the 16,000 residential palaces of the queens of Lord Krishna, and in each of them he saw Krishna engaged in different ways. Sri Narada saw all these activities of the Lord, who is the super soul of all living entities, but who played the role of an ordinary human being to manifest the activities of his internal potency. Smiling within himself, Narada addressed the Lord as follows: my dear Lord of all mystic powers, object of the meditation of great mystics, the extent of your mystic power is inconceivable, even to great demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. So we'll conclude right now with this paragraph by Srila Prabhupada. One should know definitely that such pastimes cannot be performed by anybody but Krishna, who is the original cause of creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the whole cosmic manifestation. Anyone who attentively hears, as you have so kindly done this morning, the narration of the Lord's pastimes in Dwarka, or supports a preacher of the Krishna conscious movement, will certainly find it very easy to traverse the path of liberation and taste the nectar of the lotus feet of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.